Hi, my name is Bree, and this is my second video. And this week I had a request to talk about past lives, which can be a really, really big topic. But when I asked that person if there was anything specific, they said, no, just probably you know better than I do. And I can really relate to that. When I've been so new at something, I don't even know what to ask. I don't know what to ask. So I myself, trying to answer that question or think about what to talk about today, uh, well, I asked my guidance for some guidance too, and decided to talk about what's relevant to healing the work that I do. Some people are going to use like their ability to access past lives to do other things, and but my training is in accessing them, researching them to be able to clear programs. Programs is like experience plus emotion. We create a program. I think computers were designed a lot like human beings are. And so I've heard also said like was it the conscious mind is the programmer and the subconscious mind is the driver. So if we have a lot of programs, we can have a lot of life effects that are not what we consciously want, especially if we've had trauma. Um, so when I research past lives, it's to basically get enough information to that my spiritual guidance can then clear the life, clear the programs. Um, that what I just described was basically like the first technique that I learned in working with spirit. And then I went on to learn a lot more about working more with like the structures that we put in our body, like um, in our subtle bodies, like our energy bodies. We'll put, for example, like matrices to hold the program. So there is actually a structure to these programs. We might put some sort of device to lock that program in because we believe that we never could let it go. And sometimes we need to do a little bit more to remove it from the body than just research what happened in that life. I think it's also important to know that not all our lives, like, well, first of all, they're not all human. Um, and the human lives were definitely not always like the same color and the same gender as we are now, uh, which in my experience has really helped me open my mind to a lot of things. Well, for instance, okay, so I'm a woman in this life, but I've had a lot of lives where I was a man and where I was like a warring man, brutally murdering people, which is not wonderful to admit, especially not online to a bunch of strangers. But that's where so much healing is, because that's why so much of our issues, like why we'll lock in programming to be punished forever. Because when we do hurt people, we really do understand that it's what there's that saying, it sounds kind of cheesy, but like hurting someone is hurts ourselves more, but like it kind of does. And so I did some research with guidance earlier so that I wouldn't have to be doing that while I was on this video. And after we talk a little bit, the healing that we're going to do is going to be dealing with some of that sort of stuff so that our guidance, if you choose to participate, if not, you can just set your intention to observe only. Um, but if you participate, then we'll research a life. Obviously, we all have different lives, but there's, you know, enough similarity. I'll talk a little bit more specifically, but we could say, like, for instance, like we've all had a life where we were a husband who cheated on a wife or something like that. And then that's a common enough experience that we could probably do some healing on a group level in that. Um, so yeah, so not all our lives are the same gender or the same color. They're also not all in this reality or dimension. Um, a lot of terms get used differently by different people, but so one way of looking at angel, and this is wording that I got from Robert Detzler's work, because that was my like kind of first class that I took, um, or first set of classes. And I'm not sure if the word office was from that, but I've heard that like office, angel is an office. It's something we can do. It does have a different sort of physical structure, but there is a physical structure. It's obviously not in this dimension. Um, but we do that. So like currently when I work with my guidance, um, there's so many beings that I'm working with, and it changes depending on what I'm doing. Every day when I get ready to work, I'll work with what I call my high self committee. And those they have, even just that committee has changed beings as I've moved along. Like there were a lot of angels on that committee, and there's different kinds of angels. It's not super important to understand all of it. Like I couldn't tell you the difference between all the different kinds of angels because we don't see them in this reality. What is important is to always be asking to work with the highest level of consciousness. And then too, like as I've worked, because I've been doing this for quite a while now, like what I think of as my high self committee, I think of less on a personality level than I used to. Like I used to be able to be like, okay, yeah, that's Ganesh, that's Michael, that's Jesus or Buddha or my grandma. And those all still might be true because we still exist on different levels of consciousness, but I don't see them so much as individual personalities anymore. Um, but high self committee is what I consider myself working with when I do healing work. Guardian angel is a position, and we're gonna actually work with this later. Um, my teacher used to say like they're responsible probably for other things too, but for keeping us physically safe. So she would say like anybody who drives has at least two, which I just think is kind of fun. But the reason that's relevant is that we have had these roles, and if we like the life that we're going to work on later, we were in a guardian angel role, and we felt like we failed our person that we were trying to help. So we can carry energy from lives like that too, and that's why I talk about it, like the actual specifics of what kind of angels and whatever. There might be lives where that is more important, and you might have to tap a little more specifically in to be able to clear the energy, but mostly the point of it is to clear the energy, or at least in for what I do. Another thing to keep in mind is that not all of our lives, well, I guess I've already covered that by talking about angels. When I was going to say not all of our lives are human, but when we first individuate from source, um, I've heard that term called soul family, like the souls that we were created at the same time as. And there's different closenesses, kind of like in a human family. There's sisters, there's cousins, there's in-laws, and on and on. Same-ish with soul family, same in that there's different closenesses. So a word that a term that gets used to define a lot of different things, because these people who were intuiting things were for most of time like not in the same neighborhood and able to talk to each other. And now that we have the internet, we're kind of starting, like maybe going to start all agreeing that this term means this thing. So for now, I'm never going to say anybody else is wrong when they say twin flame means something totally different. And I can think of at least 3 ways I've heard it used. I use it the way that Robert Detzler used it, meaning the closest soul family relationship. To him, he described it like a soul family as kind of like if a kid draws a picture. I kind of wish I would have done one before I started this, but like if a kid draws a picture of a flower with sort of pointy petals, this piece of paper has something I probably shouldn't hold up on the internet, but let's see if I can find it. All right, we're gonna skip the drawing. But if a kid holds up, we use my hand. These are all petals of a flower. So the souls in each petal he would call twin flames. And then the souls in the other, he called them flames because he drew the petals sort of with the pointy end. And then, but that's probably not, maybe he drew them with the pointy end because they resembled like an actual flame to him. Like we can get real esoteric real fast. And I think that it's not always going to look the same to any two people. So again, it's not that we all need to be like, okay, wait, what does the flame look like? Or the point is, per Robert Detzler from Spiritual Response, who developed spiritual response therapy, twin flames, closest soul relationship. Flame mates are the other flames in the flower. And then there could be two flowers touching, or maybe just one flower, or there could be like hundreds of flowers touching. I've had relationships where the two petals are touching. It was kind of interesting. It doesn't come up a lot. Um, or and all of those flowers would be your soul family, meaning that you were all created at the same time, tend to incarnate a lot together. Um, More and more these days, I'm hearing the word soul group when I listen to people online or meet people, in terms of uh, reincarnating together with people a lot. Um, but twin flame, going back to that first incarnation when we first start to individuate from source, it's the first time we just feel separation energy, which is so much of what we're working on to heal now. And so just starting to touch on that topic as these newly individuated beings who no longer feel connected to source, we often clung to our soul family. And then that was like our first addiction. And that's really relevant in a lot of our healing work because, yeah, addiction with people is just really intense. And we can have with people that like we're in this life and we're like, why do I care this much about this person I barely know? Or, or why am I having such a strong reaction? Or it often happens in dating relationships, like the twin flame relationship, the way I'm talking about, because other people, again, might use this to describe like your perfect relationship. But what I'm talking about in terms of that super, super close relationship that goes back to our first individuation from source, they can be almost like the worst human relationships because the addiction is so strong that we create our incarnations to help us break the addiction. And so so we put in all these things, like we might have completely different personalities, different values, and all this stuff, but yet we have all this addiction. I know this because I dated one of mine, and I mean, it was before I came to this work, and it was so interesting to me, which is one of the reasons I love this work, is a mentor that I had before was telling me like, I don't think that's love, that's addiction. And I could see how there was addiction because it was not logical, my feelings for that person. But I also felt love. And so when I came to my teacher, who I mentioned in my first video, Catherine, and I was like, is it love? Is it addiction? Is it love? Is it addiction? And I was all messed up. She's like, I mean, it's both. And I can laugh at that now and be like, well, duh. But at the time, it wasn't clear to me. That was the first time it even occurred to me, was that it's both. It's very much both. Yes, there is lots of love, but there was also lots of addiction. And then she would say something like, well, because I went on and worked through this addiction to soul thing with multiple people in the time that I've worked with her. And earlier on, she would say like rest assured that on the highest level of consciousness, you guys are great friends. And I'm thinking that's no consolation. Like, so it can be really, really intense and really painful in this life, but it can also be healed and transformed. And then the freedom that I experience now compared to the way I used to live is so worth it. And with everything that I've done, like even like the most painful energies that I've tapped in my own healing process were really nothing compared to the feeling of running from them. Um, so I hope that I can share that with you because I don't know how else to do it than to work with spirit. I've tried, I mean, I probably didn't come to spirit until I had tried everything else. And I just, yeah, I don't really hear anybody coming out with anything new saying that's really working. I mean, that doesn't mean that like that you're not going to get value from talk therapy or any other kind of therapy. I'm saying in addition to, like, if you feel that you need that, I've used that too. I've used a lot of healing techniques to walk through my life. Um, and I think sometimes we need a lot of different techniques and probably a lot of teachers, like, back to soul addiction. Like if we put all our dependence on one person, it can be a little rough when we realize that person's human and have to take them off the pedestal. um, but so yeah, for this past lives, I mean, I think I'm happy to answer more questions. So if you have them, please put them in the comments and I'll look at them and try to answer them in the next video. But I think for today, the main points are that I want to say we're not all, our lives are not all as the same gender or the same color or really even as human. And that is important to consider to clear it, because I think, well, let's see. I already researched what we're gonna heal as a group, and I think maybe I'll talk more point by point because it'll maybe make more sense if I do. So I asked guidance what they wanted to do, because in spirit there's no time and space. Spirit knows who's going to watch this video. I don't. So the sort of the thing we were going to do, which we have to do a few other things to be able to do, is called brain balance, which is pretty much like it sounds, getting the two parts of the brain to be more balanced. But I will say that in my own experience, balance means something new to me than it used to. Like I used to think of balance as being like two solids that weigh an equal amount. But in the last year or two, I was doing some work on myself and I had this experience. It was like, oh my gosh, it was, well, I could use the word ether, but I'll just say it would be more like if there were two colors of mist that were blending and they were, there's my orange fingernails. Been playing with fingernail polish lately. But so two colors of mist that are like blending and becoming one, as we are really doing in all things at this time, is moving back to oneness. So within our own selves, removing the separation down the center, the left from the right, you could say the masculine from the feminine, which I actually did reverse. I don't know if this is going to be one of those mirror your images when it gets to you, but typically the left side is considered the feminine side and the right side the masculine side. The left side is the more magnetic, whereas the right is the more electric. The yang, right side yang, left side yin, a bunch of ways to describe it. But I think we're all sort of moving towards like integration. Some people even say that the corpus callosum in the brain is dissolving on an etheric level. So I will also mention like our physical body, every aspect of our physical body has an etheric template. So every organ, there's an etheric liver and etheric lungs. Sometimes an etheric surgery will replace them. It does affect how the physical body rolls out, but once it's in the physical, it moves really slow. So I want to be clear that this is never meant to replace medical treatment. Like, if you need medical treatment, get it. Like, I mean, I don't want to tell you to get it, like, do your thing, but like, especially if it's something really serious, like, yes, of course it's consciousness, but you may not be in your body long enough to deal with the consciousness if you don't do the medical treatment. For me, I ended up having my gallbladder removed and I tried for a really long time to heal it without medical help. And I don't know if that was a good idea or not. Like I ended up having it removed and I suffered a lot along the way. Maybe some people would have been able to do it better, but you know, if they were better at eating healthy than I was. But there was a reason I had the gallbladder issue in the first place, and there was a lot of consciousness behind it. Gallbladder especially is, you could say, is where we process resentment, but I think I used to have a hard time getting my head around resentment because I was like, I don't hate people, I'm not bitter. Well, it's also like trauma, you know, like you could also say that resentment is reliving a trauma over and over again. And so when there's a lot of trauma, or a lot of anger or resentment, like those are valid too. I don't want to say, oh, I'm so spiritual, I don't get anger, because I do. I've had a lot of anger. That's a liver thing. Liver, gallbladder goes together. I ended up having my liver removed, but I still have an etheric liver, which, you know, I made sure I did because sometimes the reasons that we have a physical ailment, well, always the reasons we have a physical ailment start in the energetic. So after having the surgery, and I had help with this because I was sick, but making sure that like my etheric gallbladder was in place and doing its job, because the energetic organ does a lot. It um resentment is the discord that it processes, but the virtue is self-esteem and bravery. And like, obviously I want to live the rest of my life being able to draw in self-esteem. When I say draw in, it's because I'm thinking from a Chinese medicine perspective right now with our meridians and flow. Like, gallbladder meridian is a flow up from earth, whereas liver is uh, down from heaven. Sort of everything is circular. You can reverse them too. Um, and that can be interesting when you're trying to heal different things. But um, a, a system that's flowing well is constantly drawing in resources from both directions and doing a bunch. And so having an etheric organ is important. And I say this, like, if you've had any organs removed, they all, like, pretty common for women is to have a uterus removed. Well, our uterus can be our source of, or is our source of creativity, not just making babies, but like all kinds of creativity and vitality. So obviously you want to have an etheric reproductive system if you've had your physical one removed. So where was I? Brain balance. Brain balance, yes. The corpus callosum. Dissolving the etheric corpus callosum, which is the divider down the center of the brain. I don't know if we're going to start to see that dissolving physically in our lifetime, but that does seem to be where we're going spiritually. And sometimes I can feel it, when I'm working. It's like, it feels like there's a big wedge of something coming out. Okay. So what we're going to do for healing today is to do the brain balancing. We're going to start with, well, first of all, let's prepare. Let's take a minute to kind of center and ground. If you're not used to a grounding practice, there's no right way to do it, but you can imagine taking like your spiritual essence and grounding it all the way to the center of the earth. It might help to not have your feet crossed, but crossing your feet can actually do helpful things too. So if that's comfortable, don't think you're doing it wrong. Some people like to picture like roots of a tree coming out of their first chakra, which is at the base of the spine. If you do that, I would again picture it going all the way to the center of the earth. Okay. And then if you're not familiar with my last video, you might see my hand moving. I'm using a pendulum. It is not made of crystals. I'm not asking my pendulum anything. I'm using it. I'm letting my guidance work through my ideomotor skills, if I'm saying that right. So my guidance is moving my hand. You're gonna see my hand move. It's not like I'm asking the pendulum to move by itself. I'm fully moving my hand. And it's just a way, like, I have a bunch of charts, but I'm like kind of silently asking, is it, yes or no would be different directions or other questions. And so it's just a way to help me get information really fast from them, especially while I'm talking to you. I don't have to sit here and try to like let all the images come in. I can just get like a yes or no super fast, or like they can spin it and then give me a yes when it's like, if we need to kind of pause and let the energy move before we go on to the next step, they can let me know how long to wait by doing that. So that's what's happening if you see my hand. I'm kind of trying to hold it off camera because I think it can be kind of distracting, but you might see it. Okay. So we're going to do brain balance. And I'm going to, yeah, so we've grounded a little bit. Now I'm going to ask guidance. If you choose to participate, my guidance will take you through this. If you would rather observe and decide if you want to participate, set your intention to observe only. And then if you want to participate later, just go back through it with the intention to participate. So for those who are participating, I'm asking that we be working with beings of the highest level of consciousness. Ooh, and if you feel like a need to take a deep breath or a sigh, let that happen, because we're moving energy through the body. And in this case, what we're going to do today, we might be moving quite a bit. It might be a little different for everybody. So we're going to ask that we be working with guidance. Well, I mentioned earlier, I call them my high self committee. But that basically means we want to work with the highest level of consciousness, beings that are all at that level and that are clear of all programs, clear to a level that I call the highest level of radiant love. I think I got that from Robert Detzler too. But again, just the highest level of consciousness. I think highest is a word we can hopefully all agree on. So, and then I'm going to ask that all the beings, committee members, specialists that we're working with now also be clear to that level, and all are aligned with divine will and divine timing. I'm also going to ask them to set a grid around us. There's a bunch of layers of this grid, but we want to keep the looky-loos out. I'm totally quoting my teacher right now with looky-loos, like the beings that might be curious, like, oh, what are they doing? Well, that's lovely, and I can ask my guidance to work with them too if we want, but we don't have to help every single being that comes along all the time. It's like a human, like if you only help people 24 hours a day, you're going to get sick. You need to sleep, you need to eat, you need to take a break. So that's probably another video we could do, is talking about boundaries and how to be the most effectively helpful without draining our energy. For now, we've asked specialist beings to hold a grid around the space. That's one of them. We're also going to ask a different set to spin out all the discordant energies of the room or the home. And sometimes they go out farther into the neighborhood. I used to live in an apartment in LA, and those grids were pretty big. There's a lot of energy there. So everybody's grid is going to be a little different. My guidance is communicating with yours to know what's best for you. And the space inside is clean, and a few other things that I'm just going to ask to have done. Like, well, I'll just tell you. So the electromagnetics, they're aligning that, and then bringing in positive energy. And anything else that they would know would be in our highest and best good to do with the space. Okay, and then I'm going to ask straight off the bat for soul education. Soul is another word that people may define differently. I'm defining it today as an aspect of us that is in charge of our incarnational experience and does sometimes experience what we might call injury, and make decisions based on that, sort of getting stuck in that, like, I need to get punished over and over mode type thing. And so I just discovered along the way that, like, a lot of times things were sort of sticky and not moving for me because my soul was really clinging to that, needing to be punished, needing to suffer. Oh my gosh, I've had so many religious lives and taken so many vows and contracts to suffer, to be chaste, to be celibate, to be lonely, to be silent, to be poor. None of these things do I want in this life, but I've had so many lifetimes where I've made vows and contracts to do that, and asked my soul and put in all these structures in my body to hold those vows and contracts in place, that it has been quite a job to unmake those. And what I discovered, one of the things I discovered along the way was that if my soul had another agenda, my intention was not going to happen. So in this work with what I'm calling soul, we're working a level higher. We're working with the highest level that is not seeing value in suffering, no matter what our religious training says. I'm not saying we can't turn everything we've been through to good. You know, we make use of everything, but we don't need to do it anymore. Like, we've done that. The time on this planet is to shift back to learning through joy, learning through joy. There's a lot of ways to learn. We don't need to be tortured into learning lessons. That's another whole video I could probably do, but like how the world is changing and how there's a bunch of new energy on the planet and a bunch of old forms. When I say forms, like the form behind the patriarchy or the form behind the 2% having all the money, the forms are gone. How we're going to rebuild remains to be seen. I think we can all kind of see how the world's a bit of a hot mess in this transition, because the powers that were like benefiting from that are trying really hard to hold on. But the forms are gone. Like, we're not going back. We're going forward. We just kind of have to figure out how to build it. Because honestly, like, learning through joy, I don't know that many of us have really ever experienced that enough. We don't really, it's hard to imagine because we don't have any experience with it. Um, okay, so I'm asking for soul education, that we can be letting go of all these old beliefs, all these old patterns of things that no longer serve. And we don't, as our personality selves, we don't have to figure it out. We're just going to the highest level of consciousness and like saying, you decide, you help, you educate the soul so the soul can work with divine will. It also helps if we set our intention to work with divine will. So I'm doing that right now for myself. Okay, so, and then I'm also going to ask them to re-educate our multidimensional selves. Multidimensional being like a quick version, if you've ever seen a picture of like the yoga picture with the rainbow color balls for chakras, each of those has a whole layer of a field that is part of us. And it's not like a jawbreaker where it's one on top of the other. Everyone, like, so for example, the emotional body, typically associated with the orange color, and it may be like a few inches out of our body, and then the mental body is bigger, but the mental body goes all through and in the emotional body and the physical body. When you get out, like the heart layer is, a little farther, and then we get our spiritual layers out even farther. Which is why we can feel, one of the reasons we can feel so much of each other when we're close to each other. Like, we can feel people's anger, we can feel people's, sometimes their thoughts. If we're in a tight theater where, like, or a classroom where our arms are touching, we're in each other's mental body. So I'm asking Spirit to re-educate all of our bodies selves to our highest and best good. That doesn't necessarily, well, I mean, it doesn't mean that everything's going to be done and fixed for us today. We're educating as much as our multidimensional self is willing to accept right now. But I'm asking for the re-education. Okay. And ego. I'm asking, for me, as somebody working with this, my ego has to be at a certain level for me to get the information from Spirit. For you receiving it, it doesn't have to as much, but it feels better. So I'm asking Spirit to clear the things that trigger the ego. And now I'm going to ask that they do anything else that would be helpful before we get started on the rest of what we're going to do today. Okay, cool. So brain balance, we asked for re-education for the soul. We're going to do a bit of a release statement with the emotional body, which I just mentioned. So if you can picture that sort of orange layer, and depending on how, some combination of how sensitive you already are or how much you practice your way into this, because these are not skills that only certain people have. Like, anybody can learn to do what I do. It's part of who we are, is to communicate with Spirit. The reason we don't is because of the structures that I mentioned earlier. We put things in to block that information from coming in. Not just in here, but this is where our crown chakra is. Like, the most of our information comes in from here, from Spirit, and then the earth would come up from the bottom. But so we're going to do a forgiveness statement with our emotional body, because we have a relationship with the emotional body. There's consciousness in the emotional body, in all of our bodies, that can get stuck. I believe Eckhart Tolle describes pain bodies. So if you've read any of his work, the emotional body is, for the most part, where those are. And we can have pieces of us stuck in separation. Like, a whole modality that I do is called, well, that teacher called it inner child work, which I know some people will find the inner child as like something really wonderful and like the little person dancing with sparkles and happy. the work I'm talking about is where when there's trauma young, like well, really probably at any age, a piece of us sort of gets stuck in separation at that age. But the inner child work is when it's a real young age, like, and that age doesn't know how to act like an adult. So when it gets triggered, if we've got a 3-year-old that's in trauma, you might be an adult like wanting to stamp your feet or just scream and you don't have words, or like your boss, you don't know how to explain math because 3-year-olds don't do math. Or if you're nonverbal, like a baby, like no words, don't even have words to scream. So when those get triggered as an adult, it can be pretty disruptive, and it's one of the most driving forces, and one of the things that will hold us back the most. So the emotional body is actually what we're going to work with today. We're going to do some forgiveness and relief with the release with the emotional body. Kind of might want to think about how, like, you might be on some level, because consciously you might not have ever heard about the emotional body before today, but part of you has always known it's there, and part of you could be blaming the emotional body, and vice versa. The emotional body might be really mad at our mental body for dragging us through all this stuff that hurts. And other than that, like, you don't need to understand all of it. Just hold that in mind. It could, anything that comes to mind, if it feels like that might be it, hold that in mind. It could be different. Like, one person might be picturing orange and be like, oh, there's like some rusty, crusty orange over here. One person might be seeing themselves at a certain age crying. Like, you could hold that little one and comfort it. Um, Anything that comes to mind, roll with it, because energy looks different to different people. And sometimes your guidance will be giving you imagery to help you understand. And it doesn't have to be exactly, it's just to help you understand so you can move the energy. So I already got the words for this from my guidance. So we'll go, let me just see if we're good to go. Yeah. Okay. So um I'll say this sort of slowly, sort of pausing my glasses. Oh my gosh. Sort of pausing in between some words so that you can say them out loud. Um yeah, so we might be moving a lot of energy right now. Um if you feel intense emotions, know that they're coming up to move, and do whatever, depending on how practiced you are with, like, when I say allowing emotion, this may or may not make sense to you, but do your best to allow it, to let yourself feel it. We're not going to sit in it. We're just, sometimes you have to sort of like click on it, for lack of a better word, like to use a computer term, click on it to let it go. Um, so just do your best to allow it. And we're going to forgive our, well, we're going to ask for forgiveness from our emotional body, and then we're going to forgive our emotional body. And so I'll say these words, pausing to let you say them. If you can say it out loud, it can be really helpful, because the sound that comes out of our voice is a creative force. If you want to do it silently, that also works. Okay. So holding our emotional bodies in mind, repeat after me. Emotional body, I ask for your forgiveness for any harm, perceived or real, including my fatigue, my addictions, and my insanity. And I forgive you for any harm, perceived or real, including your envy, your malice, and your abandonment. And one way that abandonment might, where this might, one way that we might be perceiving abandonment from our emotional body is how I was describing just now about holding an aspect of ourselves in separation. Because when it's in separation, it's it becomes an either or type of situation where it's either the 3-year-old or me, as opposed to all of me working together. Okay. Now I'm going to use myself as a surrogate for those who are participating and remove some cords and attachments that can be removed now that we've transformed that consciousness. These often cord into our chakras. They can cord into organs, they can cord into meridians, they can cord just about anywhere, but chakras are a real common place for them to be. And if you're not familiar, chakras are energetic organs that have a lot to do with the way that we relate to the world. Um, okay, so I'm actually getting that we're going to replace the throat chakra right now. Okay, that was actually really just removing a device from it. Now we're gonna, I'm getting that spirit wants to do a whole chakra system replacement, which is awesome. Like, depending on where you are in your path, traditionally we for eons of time had 7 chakras, or at least maybe it would be more accurate to say we had access to 7 chakras. Um, but now 12 is really more than normal. And we used to have to do a bunch of work to integrate them so they would work together. But now, typically, when spirit replaces them, they replace the whole set and they're already integrated. But my hand seems to be going also to like minor chakras. Like right now, I'm sort of around the liver. Yeah. Okay. So we're ready to move on, although your guidance might be continuing to work on you uh, structurally, but the part that I had to help with because I'm in a physical body, we can move on from that now. Okay, so the next thing that guidance wants to do for everybody who's participating is remove time and space distortion, and the most of it I got. It's like on the right side, which is really interesting to me. I don't know why. Like, there's usually a lot of stuff going on the heart side, but to do that, we're gonna have to do. This is where we're gonna get into our past life clearing situation that I kind of that I mentioned that we would get into earlier. Um, let's see. So I want to reiterate that tapping into some of this energy might be uncomfortable. It might be really, really uncomfortable depending on, I don't know, many things. It doesn't mean that you're more or less advanced if it is or it isn't. It's just that sometimes it's kind of like things come up in layers. Like we're not physically at this point in time capable of doing it all at once. And the layer that that comes up first might be horrible, and then you're like kind of good for a while, and then another one could be just like horrible. When I say horrible, like it feels horrible on its way out. Um, if it's really like, ooh, this just feels really good, like that's awesome. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're farther along than somebody else who's going through it and is like really struggling. Because none of us have the same experiences in the same order, in the same way that we've placed them in our body. Okay, so this is I tried to give an example earlier, and I apologize if I'm not being the most clear in everything I'm talking about. Some of it's really hard, especially when I don't know who knows what. Like I think some of you I'm probably totally preaching to the choir. Like you know you don't need to hear this again. You just want, like help we're moving the energy. Other people are like brand new and like if you're like me, you're gonna be like, what? Talk more about that. What? Even though I theoretically believed in past lives when I started doing this, actually working with it brought up a lot of like, what? I mean, yeah, I think my mom is still trying to get her head around the whole we were angels before thing. And maybe the way she defines angels, we weren't. I don't know, but for our purposes, the one we're going to do has to do with having been a guardian angel on somebody else's committee. And that's what Spirit picked for us um, to work through. And working through this particular past life is what needed to happen for this group to be able to clear the time space distortion, or I don't know if clear is quite the right word, but to heal it. And then when we're done with that is when we'll go and do the brain balance and we'll be done for the day. So okay, so it's not like, wait, let me ask. Yeah, it's not like we were all the same person in one life. It's just that we all have lifetimes, we all have an experience that was similar enough for this particular bit of research to be helpful. So we're going to be looking at a life where we were a guardian angel to a human who was a dark energy. And dark energy just means like really heavy programming. I think sometimes that might be like a little bit of an oversimplification, because it can be so painful. But I also like to just be really clear that like we, when I say just a lot of heavy programming, I'm saying that to help us not judge. Uh, Also, I mean, okay, I'll just say it. Like right now, we look at the world and it's really easy for people to judge. Oh my gosh, especially like when you look at wars or just such painful things that people do to each other and the planet and the animals. And it's very, well, it's like eons of time worth of habit to judge people. So it's hard to break out of that. But if you can see it as people with really heavy programming, or let's take it out of like so big and vague as the whole world. If you in your lifetime have been horribly abused by someone in your family, there's, or anyone, it doesn't have to be your family, it can be really hard to not judge them. But, and I'm not saying like, there's a difference between judgment and awareness. I'll use the word forgiveness right now, but I know it brings up a lot of walls for people because it's been so like used to manipulate through religious channels over times for some people. Forgiveness is not for the other person. I mean, it probably benefits them too, but it's so we don't have to carry it. Like, okay, for instance, like a rape. Forgiving the rapist doesn't mean inviting them to your fucking birthday party. Sorry if I swear. I don't know if you can do that on YouTube. Hopefully it doesn't get blocked because of that, but it doesn't mean you have to like invite the molester to be the babysitter. That's insane. What it means is we don't have to walk through life feeling abused anymore. It means moving the energy, removing the programs, removing the matrices, removing the way that it sits in our body so we don't have to carry it anymore. Somebody once asked me, like, does that mean you won't remember anymore? And I was like, it doesn't mean we're not gonna, it's not like you forget, it's just that you maybe don't think about it. Like it doesn't matter when you don't have the energy stuck in your body anymore. The reason it's so horrible, these experiences, is that they sit in the body and we're like basically without healing it, just reliving it all the time, constantly feeling those abuses because they're sitting in the body. Some abuses, one of the worst things about it is that the perpetrator is pumping their negative energy into the other person's body. So you might have like if you were raped and you've been doing a lot of work on your own anger, it might be that like the next step is to realize that it's not all your anger, it's the other person's, and you have to give it back. Give it back spiritually. I do not mean you have to go have a conversation with that person, because the personality person may never get it or evolve or might not do it in this lifetime. It's not our job to make them change now. What will heal is when we work with them on a soul level and give back what's not ours and take back what is ours. and get free of all the energy. And we can, there's well, right now we're actually working with time space distortion. So it's big. There's a lot. It's don't want to be too confusing. I sometimes get a little confused myself when I start talking about it because it is so big and there's potentially 10 things to talk about. I'm like, which one? And I'm maybe like, oh, I started down that one and I want to talk about this one. It's better. So apologies if I'm not super clear. If I trigger questions, please put them in the comments and I will try to go there. Maybe make time where just that one little tangent is something we can spend some time on, because there's like a lot of stuff to talk about when you start working with these realms. I had a friend once who thought it was really kind of terrifying when I told her something. I was like, oh, it's because of past life. She's like, oh, that sounds so scary. I was like, for me, it's such a relief because I've been living my life like, why is it all so hard? And now I finally have a tool to clear it. That specific example was being in the spice aisle, and this guy, like, he was just standing in front of all the spices. Like, he could have just moved over and then we could have both looked at them equally. But instead, I'm like way over here trying to see, and it's like hard to read because they're little. And, but I was full of rage, and that's like not proportional to his level of inconsideration. Like, I was full of rage. And it didn't leave me for a while. Like, I was driving home with it until I remembered, like, because I was kind of new to this, and I was like, oh, I wonder if that was a past life thing. Because I was still a little bit like kind of rolling my eyes at the people in class who were like, oh yeah, we've known each other in a past life. And I was okay, I was judging back to like, that's not always great, not great for me because it was holding me back on my learning curve. But so I did a forgiveness and release statement with him when I got prepped to work, and went away. And that was just a really big experience for me, because it was like, oh my gosh, all these times that I'm walking around in a store and I'm just like, I hate people and I'm so uncomfortable. Like, I didn't know why. I thought there was just something wrong with me. I was just wired wrong. I was never going to be happy. But then it was like, oh, there's a reason and there's something I can do about it. And then I started learning about boundaries. Like, it's not necessarily like every guy in the spice aisle is somebody you killed in a war before, but like boundaries, that's another probably many videos worth of conversation. But the boundaries get affected by all the things that we've been talking about: cords, programs, unforgiveness. Um, and if you don't have any boundaries, you can be walking through the world picking up everybody's feelings and thoughts sometimes. Like, not that we necessarily recognize it as their thoughts, but there's this field I talked about it in my last video, the collective field, where there's just constantly information, and our divine design is that we don't need to take all that in. It's just like in personality life, we don't need every bit of information about everybody's life all the time. It's like, we don't have time for that. Come on, I got stuff to do. But if you're walking through life picking up all that information, it can be a total overload. And if you haven't known how to deal with that, here's a great start. And also, if that particular thing is really like, you're like sitting there going, oh my God, I have that, maybe pick up Cindy Dale's book called Energy Boundaries or Energetic Boundaries. It's a little old now, but it is also, as I recall, really explains a lot of different ways they can be effective and gives you exercises on how to work on it on your own. But also sometimes it's really helpful to just have somebody else help you personally. Okay, so I think we can move on now. So we're looking at a past life where we were a guardian angel to someone who was a dark energy. And that could be, I mean, it could be a warlord. It could be somebody who was a tyrant to their family. That is where it could all be different for all of us. But we'll just say dark energy, a lot of heavy programming, not super nice. Like, okay, I don't want to minimize it, because the reason we feel that we did harm to that person was that we abandoned our post as their guardian angel. We thought they were too bad to protect. Like, if you remember, I was saying like guardians sort of keep you physically safe, like when you're driving. Okay, was this person? They were not in a war. I just asked that. It wasn't a war thing, but we abandoned our post and basically let them die. So, um, yeah, so in a lot of ways, we felt like we murdered this person who then in this life, for 85% of the people listening to this video, that person is their current life mother. And for the rest, it's an important woman. And I think this is probably coming up now because there's a huge return to bringing back the divine feminine on the planet. So this is potentially like super big energy for you right now. And so like guidance can clear a lot of past life stuff without as much research as we had to do on this life. But this one, sometimes we have to sort of hear it to know. And then listening, hearing it kind of taps into that energy, and then our guidance can clear it. Whew, that's a deep breath because I feel a lot of energy moving right now on that. So if you're feeling a lot of energy, take some deep breaths. Okay. And then I had to ask for this one, sometimes that information would be enough to clear it, but on this one, we need a little bit more. The energies that we are holding on this particular life and this particular situation are unforgiveness. And that's, I think, largely in this case, unforgiveness of ourselves, spiritual suicide. So it's kind of like it sounds like, except for that it's like the soul doesn't even think it has the right to exist as a soul for doing something so bad. So that's really heavy energy, of course. Whew, yeah, let's give that a minute to let our guidance kind of help move that through. Again, if you're feeling like, no, I don't want to look there, remember it's just coming up to clear. Sometimes just allowing it is all it needs and it can just be gone. It doesn't need to, it doesn't need to hang out. If we tap into it, doesn't mean we're keeping it. We are just tapping into it so it can move. You might feel this a little lower in your back. That's the emotional center of the body, back and front, but also because for so many people this is the mom, that second chakra area, or some people call it the hera now because with having 12 they're not all exactly always in the same place as they used to be, but that sacral area is we get where so much courting and attachment happens with our family. For so many of us having that be our actual physical mom in this lifetime, it's a real commonplace for cords to be. So you might be getting some, I'm just going to kind of use myself as a surrogate again here right now. These things can all go. And if you feel like holding your own hands on any part of your body, do, because your hands are healing tools as well. Okay. And then the other energy that we've been holding on that is sadism. So that was really news to me when I was researching this before I got on to record this video. I was like, sadism? That's weird because that's enjoying the pain of others or wanting to cause the pain of others. And this one we're like, so what I got was, let's see. So there's this weird thing that we do. You can probably see it in your human life too. Like when we've hurt others, we will often want to blame people for knowing about it. Um, yeah, like if you watched my first video, you already know that I quit drinking at one point, and so a lot of the healing work for that was um like facing the fact where we've hurt others, like admitting it. And it's so weird to me now because I've been sober for 17 years, and I still watch how hard it is for people to just apologize. Like the most simple apologize for the stupidest things. Like we're not even talking like letting your charge as an art as an angel die. We're talking about just minor inconsiderations. And so many people have such a hard time just admitting they did it and apologizing. And I think it all goes back to just like a tremendous fear that we won't be loved if we're not perfect. If we don't do everything just right. If we ever do anything wrong, we're not going to be loved. Well, that is a misunderstanding. And maybe in another video we'll do some work on the belief systems on that because that's some deep work too. But So yeah, so there's really an element of when we have harmed people, we sometimes blame people for knowing about it, and we want it to be their fault because we're so afraid of just admitting that we hurt someone. And then there's also like um oh, I think I already said that. But what's coming to mind is like when or before I quit smoking cigarettes, when somebody would quit, like there was a part of me that enjoyed it when they would smoke again because I had such low self-esteem and I felt so bad about myself for not being able to quit. Like for some reason, them not being able to either made me feel better about myself. And I'm just throwing these things out here, like because sadism, sometimes we hear other people's stories and we can go, oh, because like I can judge the word sadism right now and be like ew, I so do not want to admit that I have sadism. And we're just talking about frequencies. Like I'm not saying that anyone, including myself, is a sadist, but we do have frequencies in our body. And a lot of times we judge these words like hate. I remember like going through a phase where I would start to think, oh, I hate. No, 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 I don't hate. I don't hate. That's terrible. Well, if there's hate as a frequency sitting in one of our organs, like we very much want to let that go. And so just even simply being like, oh, do I like, and this is why I love working with spirit, is I can be like, please help me transform it. Like acknowledging I have it does not need to mean that I stay hateful or that I want to hate or that I even am hate. Like, but I had to acknowledge that it was there to be able to let it go. And so that's what we're doing with sadism today. Whatever that looks like for you, it may not look like my examples, but maybe my examples help you see where, oh, maybe that is, or maybe sadism or hate or resentment, maybe they're not quite what we thought they were. And so we're dismissing it, but like, oh, is it this? Like with the smoking, like the part of me that kind of liked it when people lit up again. Like, is that sadism? Maybe. Like, I think it kind of is. Okay. Well, not here to punish ourselves. We're here to ask our divine selves to transform it so we don't have to be like that anymore. So, yay, us. We get to be free of it. And also, when we're looking at the world, we are so helping the world by transforming ours. Because we can look out there and go, oh my gosh, the sadism, like yuck. Like people are hurting each other and they love it and it's horrible. But every time we unmake just one little thread that's like maybe so much lighter weight that we don't even recognize it as sadism, we're actually affecting the collective consciousness and helping the world. And because on some levels we're all one, we're helping them know how to do it because now some part of them knows how to do it too, even though they didn't sit through this session. So we're helping ourselves and we're really helping the world by doing this work. And so thank you for showing up to do that. I think it's really wonderful because I don't really know how else to help the world right now. But this is not small. I want to be really clear that this is not small. Okay. So anything more? That's enough. That's all we need. We don't have to figure anything else out. Might have been a bit over talking on that one, honestly. So I'm just been letting spirit work though while we're talking. Um, so spirit's ready to move on. Now we're gonna do the brain balance, and I'm not really gonna say anything about that. I'm just gonna let spirit do it, and then when they let me know we're done, we'll be done. I might say something if I feel it, but okay, they're done with that. Oh, we're gonna just make sure that we're all set up for integration. When we do something like we just did, where we tap into a past life that's been really stuck and probably has like a lot of devices that had to do with it, now guidance can go in and do so much of that structural work. Um, I'm doing this for all of us. Like I'm just pulling stuff off the kidneys. I keep feeling it. That's where we process fear. There is so much of that up in the world right now. So I hope you feel some freedom from that. I'm like the middle of the back right now. So when we do a transformation of consciousness statement like that, or tap into like a past life research, now guidance can go and remove a bunch of cords, remove a bunch of matrices, or like an infinite possibility of structures we put into our energy structure that is us. Um, and they're gonna still be working on you for, let me see, a couple hours. Let me, yeah, they're still going to be removing devices and structures from you for about 5 hours. So this is, like I said, it's big. We just made it possible for a lot of healing to happen. So I hope you feel the joy and benefits of that. Do be mindful of self-care, like really drink a lot of water. Electrolytes can be great. We're moving a lot of electromagnetic energy through our fields when we do this work. Getting some extra rest. If you feel like you want to go take a nap, let yourself. Maybe probably don't drink alcohol for like 3 days. You might find yourself getting a lot drunker than you normally would on the same amount while this work is processing. Um, don't do like a Reiki session or anything for like one day. You just, it's kind of like we want, I don't want to say we want to let the scab heal, but like you kind of do. Like, I mean, we just had a bunch of surgery, like etheric surgery. So there are pieces and parts that need to mend back together and heal. And your guidance will be still working actively on you for 5 hours. It's going to take a lot longer than that to integrate. Um, but that's why we just want to like let it settle for a little bit. I'm getting that there's nothing else for today. So I hope you enjoyed that. Any questions or any topics you want me to talk about in my next video, go ahead and put it in the comments here. Or also, like, my Insta handle is the same, Embodied Spirit Life. I might see those comments more easily. I'm still kind of finding my way with YouTube, but anyway, I hope you feel some healing, and I hope you have a great day. Thanks for coming.